What would happen in your business if you could flip a switch and start thinking like whomever you believe the top CEO is that you know? I mean, just like that. Flip a switch and you begin making the same decisions that they would make if they were running your business. And in reality, your business would probably, jump to the next level pretty fast, right? Well, the difference between how a highly successful CEO thinks and how you think is not that different. In fact, I'd argue to say that there's one main difference that you can start doing right now, and the results you get in your business would be profoundly bigger. And this is one of those things that I learned as I grew in business and that I just wished that I knew a lot earlier. Because if you know anything about my past, you know that I spent the majority of the first decade of my business life struggling. And when I was finally exhausted and I wanted to sell that business, which was the chain of health clubs, after a year trying to sell it, the best offer that I got was less than the amount that I owed on all the debt. So I literally would have walked away with no money from the sale, plus several $100,000 in bills that I still would have owed. So obviously I needed a better way to sell that business. So what I ended up doing was spending the next several months meeting with bankers and money lenders, taking them out to lunch and asking them, geez, what would it take to fund somebody to buy my company at the price that I'm looking for? And basically I asked them to tell me what their dream scenario was, that if they were presented with this dream scenario, they would definitely fund that deal. And during every single meeting, I took copious notes and I put together this checklist of what lenders wanted in order to financially back a buyer. And long story short, I used what I learned and I spent the next 2 years reworking my business to focus on just those few actions that create the majority of growth in business. The actions that create specific results that lenders are looking for. And those were by far the best 2 years up to that point. We made more money, we made more profit, we reached more people in those 2 years than the previous 10 years combined because I rebuilt the company to be sellable. And when you do that, even if you're not thinking about selling it, when you do that, your business becomes leaner and more profitable and more scalable and far more fun to run. And after that 24-month period of time, that company that was so cash poor for all those years sold. And it sold for more money than I had ever seen a chain of health clubs sell for. Now, why am I telling you this? Because fast forward to today, and I've built over a dozen companies, and over and above that, I've funded the growth of some amazing businesses. And I also put together Club 28, which is my private advisory firm, all based on many of the same foundational principles that I learned from those lenders. And the moment it all changed for me was when I changed my mindset from a basic entrepreneurial mindset to thinking like a CEO. And bear in mind, when I made that change, I was still struggling. I was living with my parents. I was supporting myself and my business mostly on credit cards. So it wasn't like all rainbows and sunshine. So if you think for any reason that you're not ready to begin thinking like a CEO, then that's the first obstacle that you need to fix. And that will be the moment that it all changes for you too. So let's dive into the mindset of a CEO. Because after sitting in on, hundreds of boardroom meetings and team meetings with some of the most amazing CEOs, some of who work for my companies, some are on my board, and some of them are just friends. But there's one thing that is blaringly obvious that separates them from the millions of struggling entrepreneurs and owners out there. And it's the same reason why I could run a portfolio of successful companies when most people have troubles building one business. The difference is I know my core competencies. And just as important, I focus the majority of my time on my core competencies. And so does every CEO or super successful entrepreneur that I know of. And I work hard to make sure that everybody in my company stays focused on their core competencies too. And there's tools that we use to help us with this. One of them is a process org chart. And I've went into detail about how to build these in other videos and on my Instagram page too. But in essence, a process org chart is a basic organizational chart built not really for where you are today and not for where you want to be in 5 or 10 years down the road, but it's built listing the departments that you need in your business for where you want to be in 10 to 12 months. And then inside of every single box, you list the 3 to 5 most important responsibilities for whomever lives inside of that box. So after it's all filled in, you should have a simple one-page org chart that shows every position in your company that needs to be filled to get you to the next level of growth. And the most important core competencies that each person needs to have in order to drive your company forward. But right now, we kind of just need to define your core competencies. So answer this question. What are you so amazing at? Something that brings so much value to others that they're willing to pay you for it or they want to work with you because of it. For me, I know what I'm really good at, and I also know what I'm really not good at. And the hardest years of my life were those when I was spending 80% of my time doing everything else and only 20% of my time on my core competencies. Personally, I'm good at building companies. I mean, I know how to look at a company and restructure for growth, and I have a strong record of big wins doing that, not just for my companies, but for those that I consult with and that I invest in as well. Another core competency of mine is leading teams. So in almost every one of my companies, I run daily meetings with my leadership teams because I know how to keep people focused on the most important actions that are needed to get the company to the next level of growth. And I can easily speak about probably dozens of other business owners that I've worked with who were stuck and beginning to plateau in their growth. And then after they focused on their core competencies and spent 80% of their time on those actions, everything got better. One CEO in our advisory program was already successful when I met him. He was already doing probably about $5 million a year in revenue. But everything kind of rested on his shoulders because he spent 80% of his time writing sales copy and trying to hire people to work in his warehouse and creating products. And he touched just about everything else in his company too. And the transition for him was pretty slow. I mean, I think it took probably 7 or 8 months before he gave up some of the control. It's tough. It's tough to give up control. But he gave up enough to stay focused on his core competencies. And then very soon after he made that transition, I think he closed that year out around $30 million. Big, big difference, right? And that might not be exact because I don't dig into the books of every company that I advise. I help him scale. But I did watch him grow, and I watched him grow massively, and I watched him add team members on, and I watched his sales skyrocket. So my guess is that number is pretty damn accurate. And there's far more examples of this. But the fact is, you need to know your core competencies. And the most accurate way of determining somebody's core competencies, including your own, is to look at track records. And here's a mistake. Please don't make this mistake of asking yourself or anybody else what their core competency is, because inevitably they'll tell you what they want to be good at. As business leaders, you don't have the leeway to care about what people want to be good at all the time. You need to know what they naturally excel at and what you naturally excel at as well. So only look for track records of success in your past for yourself and in the past of everyone on your team as well. And then focus the majority of your time on the most vital actions that drive the majority of growth around those core competencies. Because your growth is determined, at least in part, by your ability to know everybody's core competencies and keep them focused on those. Because knowing your core competencies, it gives you a massive upper hand in business. And I promise, if you take time to really dig into what your core competencies are and then use them in business, you will be amazed at how much easier growth comes into your life. And if you need help figuring out what your core competencies are, use the free tools on my website. It's chrisguerriero.com, and start with the Built to Grow review. There's a button somewhere at the top that says Built to Grow review. Start there. It's completely free, and it'll help you determine your strengths and also what your core competencies are in business. All I ask is that you share this, because we need more strong entrepreneurs in the world, because business shapes the economy more than politicians, more than local or national governments, more than the stock market. Growing businesses shape our economy and our future. So we need more entrepreneurs to hear this. There's, I promise you, no lack of room at the top. There's far more than enough room for every business to grow. And if you're smart, you're going to watch how other businesses and in other industries grow. And that growth will trigger ideas that will form the foundation for your next massive growth spurt. All of my information on YouTube and Instagram and every other social platform is free. I teach specific tactical strategies that are proven to work in the companies in my personal portfolio and also in the companies that I advise and invest in. I mean, these are not secrets, right? They're not fluff. They're the same tactics I use when I go into a business that I own or that I invest in to predictably scale. So please share this with other entrepreneurs and CEOs in your circle. And if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, make sure you go over to my YouTube channel and get the video version of this, because I put content on each one of the platforms. Sometimes it's different. Sometimes it's just stated a little bit different so that you could hear it from a different point of view. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now, go to one of the other platforms and share it on those platforms as well. And whatever platform we meet on, let me know what you got out of this message in the comments. I challenge you to engage with me more deeply on each of the platforms so that I know what information to give you in my next video. I hope what we discussed today helps you grow faster and more smoothly in your business and the businesses around you too.